Grassroots private group of conservatives here in Oconee County, South Carolina. Okay, how's this? Can you hear me? All right, good. I'll move closer. So we were organized in April 2021. The Facebook group grew from a few people to over 2,700 in less than 3 weeks when we started. And since our organization, we have helped conservatives in Oconee County have a voice in county governance as a group instead of just fractured individuals. We are essentially the Freedom Caucus wing of the Oconee County Republican Party, unlike the OCRP, which must remain neutral party for all Republicans. The OCC is a nonprofit political action committee which can advocate for true conservative values and candidates. Thank you. Enjoy the food.
Test. Can y'all hear me in the back? Turn it up some. Test. Can you hear me? All right, good. All this is right. Okay. Can we move the
I need to fix it. Yeah, raise it back up. There you go. All right. Okay, let's
put that seat in here.
all right. Let's get over.
Testing 1, AB 2, 3, 4, 6.
Give me another test.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Yeah, they're good.
Good.
Get out of Greenville. You're not you. I want to get older when I get older. Somebody says never come. Never say every game is Joe's family. Joe Evans. And I just want him to you know how he's on the election. And
Yeah, that's what I seen on Facebook. It's gotta be sprawled out. I didn't know if you had some. You know we're gonna need to we kind of kept us looking around. Yeah, we thought I've been working that area. Take a boy rest and all. Getting that best friend. You like that? I'm making you some of that. I ain't made none of it. I make this man would make that smart. They freeze it. I make one and thank y'all for coming.
It took us in Greenville. I mean, they were like, I equated self-interest and service. You're more interested in yourself.
Yeah, that's the one. So we've got an interesting thing I've heard about Greenville.
It was really impressive. They They just passed that first step. See the first step? First step the main sponsor was first step to accountability. What they did, all 46 counties have a first step target. I'll section
Yes, ma'am, like I said, I'm always military too. And
Yes, I got
I was gonna say, well, my business card. I'll make And I was just gonna all I know is how all guys. And then we're gonna
Sometimes I have spasms like inside of my right thigh. My back is like
Move it up a little.
I'm not missing any meals.
Last call.
And they have different. They have the Revolutionary War. Yes. Because I really want to use the Nobody related.
Like, I got one location. Every time I show so one time,
All right, ladies and gentlemen, last call for the 50-50 raffle. If you're interested in it, please go up to the table and put in your money. All right, at this time, I would like to call the founding members of OCC to come up and we're presenting an award for outstanding OCC member.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Good? Thank everybody I really appreciate you for coming out today. What I want to do is introduce this is Dave Nix, Mr. Mickey Haney, and that is Tommy James. 2 years ago, Matthew Durham, he's not here, but 2 years ago, Matthew Durham started this, and we have grown, graciously. It's been really nice for all of us to get together. We want to continue doing this, so just be ready and be listening, because the more we can do this, the better we are. So there's this fella in this room, and he's been fighting this battle for a long time. Back before the OCC was ever put together. And this gentleman, he would say, guys, we got to get to the county council. We've got to get in numbers. We got to go. And finally, we started listening to this man. And he was right. Because going to a county council meeting has opened my eyes to what really goes on in this county. And tonight, we want to recognize this one man who's been fighting this fight by himself before us for a long time. Mr. Tony Adams, will you please come up here? This man, I consider a great friend. Come around here with me. I consider this man a great friend. He changed my life because he gave me as a young man, he gave me a chance that not many people would give me, because he was my human resources officer, or human resources manager at 2 different plants. And today I've been at the same plant that this man hired me in for 29 years. This man is Tony Adams is a dang fine gentleman, and I love him. I love him to death. And Tony, what we want to do is we want to present you with the Thomas Paine Award. You deserve this award long before I got it. And I hate that, but
Thank you, Big Guy.
you are the man, Tony. So I would like to read this award. It says, this is the Thomas Paine Award. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the services of his country. But he that stands, is that stands or strands? Oh my God. But he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of men and women.
Well, this is totally unexpected, and didn't expect nothing like this, but I appreciate it. I don't think I expected, because a lot of people work at this a lot harder than I do. Matthew Dearham, David Nix, Mickey Haney, and even Perry in his own unique way. But I do appreciate it. Thank you.
And now I will turn it over to Mr. Roel. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
All right. So next, I want to introduce the person that's going to introduce our speaker tonight. I want to bring Mr. Jeff Davis up here. He was the former chairman of the Greenville County Republican Party. He was also the founder, president, and board chairman of the Georgia Kids First Scholarship Program, and also the co-founder and board chairman and volunteer for the Palmetto Kids First Scholarship Program. Also Chief Financial Officer for Travel Smiles Organization, and manages a law firm, Apogee Law Davis. Mr. Davis.
Somebody looked on LinkedIn, I guess. Some of those things I do, some I still don't do. But again, my name's Jeff Davis. I was the former chairman of the Greenville County Republican Party. Presley Stutz was our executive committeeman. We were elected in July 22nd. Is today? No, July 22nd. Today, yeah. In 2021, so that was our positions. Presley was I don't know if y'all know Presley Stutz, but Presley actually wasn't even at that convention that EC meeting, because he was in the hospital and ended up, or actually he was still at home at that time, sick with COVID, and passed away on August 19th. But if we had known what we knew today about how to treat that, we could have saved his life, and it really motivated a lot of our people to get involved on the medical freedom side and to help, and I think we've saved lives. We got very active with the monoclonal antibodies. Danny Verdon, a state senator in the lower part of Greenville County, part of our delegation. He's the chairman of medical affairs down there at the Senate side. He got us, some Senate hearings and things like that. But what this is all about is about returning power to the people. How do we, because we talk a lot about it over in Greenville. We talk a lot about it with what we do with mySCGOP.com and .news, is the mental manipulation that goes on in politics. We are all being abused by this system that's out there. And I was talking to someone earlier today. It's very difficult to figure out who is who. And what we have determined, one of my litmus tests, is are you interested in self or service? So we really look for people that are interested in service, that want to give back, that this is not their career. And one of the other things that we do over in Greenville with mySCGOP is, when you get these positions, these are not positions for life. I know y'all have some legislators up here that have been in office like forever. And it's like, why are you there? This is not a career. And one of the things we teach people is the very first thing you're supposed to do when you get in one of these positions is to find your replacement. And I was fortunate enough to find my replacement, Yvonne Julian, who used to be a Democrat, but she's a Trump Republican. And these are the types of people we want to get into our party. Because the battle is not R versus D, Republican versus Democrat. The battle is the establishment in both of those parties against we the people. And I'm from South Carolina. I've been here forever. My family's been here since the 1600s and whatnot. And it's our fault. We have fallen, down and not got involved in this. And I used to be one of those drive-by voters. I mean, I started a career, was doing stuff down in Atlanta, and after I got out of law school and got my MBA, and I was working 24/7. Almost. I think I worked less then than I do now, but at least then I got paid. It was a lot nicer. But I'm like, we didn't get involved in politics, and we've got to get people educated and involved in this process, because if we're not involved, it's somebody who does not have our best interest at heart. So Yvonne is one of those people. I'd like to introduce her. Yvonne Julian is the chairman of the Greenville County Republican Party. She was my first vice chair. And I gotta say it, she started college at 15. She was one of those smart kids that went to college early. So, Yvonne Julian.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. Well, so first of all, I have to thank everybody. I mean, this is one of those encouraging moments, because you think this is a Saturday evening when most people are out having fun, but we got a group of grassroots patriots, here to talk politics and, the whole idea of how do we get people more involved. So thank you all very much for coming out. And if somebody had asked me a year ago where would I be, the night of July 22nd, I would have lost $1 million bet if they said Oconee County, talking to the Oconee County conservatives. So, one of the challenges, I'm sure you guys have learned this, and you talk with people in politics, there's always more talk. They always have more to say than there is time. But I promise I'm going to focus this, and I'm focusing the who, what, where, when, and why about me and how I became a Trump Republican, so that it ties to the job that we as grassroots conservatives all have to do. So that's this job about engaging more people and specifically getting more people interested enough in politics so they come out and vote in primaries, because that is the fundamental solution to solving our problems. So it's not just getting people to vote, but it's also getting candidates. But that's the job that we have to do. So I want to tell you about my experiences, and hopefully you will learn something that will help you do that job. So, and the other thing is, I'd like for you to keep maybe 3 key takeaways. And those are going to be, first of all, that in any process of changing your mind, there's a lot you have to unlearn and learn. So I think for all of us, we're, unlearning a lot of things that we believed about media, about, our political representatives. So that's just, it's a process you have to go through. The other thing is Jeff talked about manipulation, and I'd like to credit him specifically and with the effort that mySCGOP does in to really educate people about the level of that goes on in our culture, and specifically how insidious it is. And I'll give you some examples. And then I think the last thing is to think about is, we all have to learn to have faith in the right things and the right people. And I think, unfortunately, we've, fallen down on the job with some of that. And so I don't know, is anybody, so just as an example of those 3 things, did anybody hear the story about the Stanford president? Does anybody know what went on in Stanford University today? So this is one of the most prestigious universities in our country. The president resigned. And why did he resign? Because an 18-year-old kid went back and looked at papers that this guy has done. This is a neuroscientist. He's applauded by his entire profession. And an 18-year-old kid went by and discovered that he had falsified photos in 9 research papers. Now, this guy had done research on Alzheimer's, and there were questions raised at the time because other people could not duplicate his work. But because he was who he was, he's another Dr. Fauci, right? He's who he is, so nobody questions him. So that's a fascinating story. It's one of those stories, look it up because it will encourage you. Because this kid, it just gives you goosebumps. And it gives you hope, So the other interesting thing that reminds us about how much manipulation that goes on is about the AP story about this. So this guy who did this song, Try It in a Small Town. All right. So the AP has a story that claims that he filmed this video in an area where there was a lynching, So, that's more Democrat code language, right? Well, it turns out that it was actually just a courthouse, and the same scene was used in a Hannah Montana movie. So you ask yourself, why would the Associated Press put out that kind of a lie? But it just reinforces, again, that these are the kind of, this is what we're dealing with. And unfortunately, this is what permeates our political system and what makes it so hard for good, honest conservatives like us. So, the other thing that, I hope that you will get out of this today, and I'm going to read you something real quickly, because the other thing for us to remember is that in trying to bring people into the party, what's important is to think not about the big picture, but about the individual. So we talk a lot about at our Coffee and Politics about touching people 7 times in order to basically open them to new ideas. And that's touching the individual. So I'd like to read you something that I think relates to that and relates to me personally. And what this says is that, and this is a good message for us because as conservative Republicans, we like to give people a lot of data. But here we're saying that statistical results are great, but even more compelling is that statistics will not change long-held beliefs rooted in personal experience. And so that's something for us to remember as we talk to people, because that's part of the manipulation that the Democrats have used with Black people, is they've taken personal experiences that people may have historically had, and they've magnified those, and they've basically enslaved people mentally. So with that, so now we'll talk a little bit about, so I'd like to, is there any volunteer who would like to suggest the first thing that comes to their mind when they think about the life of a child in the Black ghetto in Chicago or any other urban city? So what do you think, just the first thing that comes to your mind about what that life would be like? And this would be late 50s, early 60s. So just any random person. Okay, Royal? Ah, interesting. I love that because it's the exact opposite. So I will tell people that what the Chicago of the 50s, late 50s and early 60s, we played outside at night until 9 o'clock. We were somewhat fearful, but my sisters and I walked miles to the public library. We had 2-parent families. These housing projects, they are in the ghetto. There's 16-story buildings with, 10 apartments. So people are concentrated. But there is also neighbors that looked out for each other. They looked out for kids. So you're right. But the living in fear characterizes more of the Chicago of today. And I think I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it lets us know is what's happened not only to Chicago, but to so many other of our cities across the country. And so my childhood, I have no complaints about it. We watched TV, and not once were we concerned or upset that there was nobody that looked like us in Leave It to Beaver. We had the kind of childhood where the teachers told you that you were capable of and you needed to meet the same standards as everyone else. So none of this nonsense that liberals are talking about today existed. And I think my childhood, I'm much better for it. And so now if you move to sort of the education arena, because I've told you need to unlearn a lot, right? But also education was a big part of, what shaping my life. And so I got educated in the sciences. That's just the kind of kid I was. I, grew up, planting things and, learning about chemistry. And I I think that was a good deal for me because that sent me down a particular pathway. But it was also a pretty secular education because, my mother was she's a single parent, but Southern Baptist. And so she was, religious, went to church. But if you think about those times is when, and it continues to this day, there's an effort to divorce religion from intellectualism. So people who are smart, don't believe in God. And so one of the greatest things that's happened to me in retirement is my hobby of apologetics in learning about how many famous scientists are actually believers. People like Spike Saris, who was a former NASA astronaut, or not astronaut, but a NASA engineer. And so the last part of my education, and I think was critical, was this feminism. So I went to college at a time when feminism was just coming of age, and it made an impression on not only me but a lot of other, I think, religious women. One of the pro-life leaders, here in South Carolina, talks about how feminism made her question her faith, and she came back. But it was a big influence. And so I just leave you with another funny story about education. Is it shows you how I feel fortunate being blinded to certain things, because I was talking with a woman the other day and she used the phrase POC. And I said, well, what's a POC? She said, a person of color. And so for young people today, that's ingrained in their minds. But I had no idea, what she was talking about. But that's the language that people speak nowadays, unfortunately. So fast forward, so I'm becoming an adult. I've, gotten out of school, and then I became a person that, just to share with you a couple of characteristics that I think helped me, be a decent leader in the grassroots area. And I would say the first one would be just being a listener and having natural curiosity about people. So when you're out talking to people, anybody about that conservative values or trying to recruit people, you realize that people need somebody to listen to. And so if you can be a good listener, or you can ask them questions about themselves, specifically, the quintessential business question is, what keeps you up at night? What worries you? And I think that's a great way to open a political dialogue without so much of the sort of in-your-face politics that might turn people who are not in the political bubble off. The other thing that I think is good is to try to, I am a person that encourages and motivates others, and I think that's a job that all of you as grassroots leaders have. Because if you think about it, you look at people like Jeff, Olga, Terry, all of you guys, nobody's getting paid to be here. We don't do this for money. And so the volunteers are just really a tremendous asset to grassroots politics. So Jeff and I actually talked with a woman who is she's a black female. She is a county chair for El Paso County, Colorado. And we actually communicated because she shared a very similar story to what happened in Greenville. So when she became the chair of that party, they basically set up a shadow organization. She got nothing but grief from the establishment. So she and I talked, and we sort of shared stories. And the number one thing she said was that what made her successful was the volunteers. And I would say that. So that is, just keep in mind of always kind of encouraging and keep those people coming back. So I'm also a very time-conscious person, so I'm obsessed with like watches and clocks, and I always have this image in my mind of like an hourglass, the sands of time are like dripping. It's like, oh, we gotta hurry up and do this, So anyway, but again, it's just keeping in mind that if you're running a grassroots organization, how do you make sure you prioritize and you have people working on things that are going to give them some results. I also like problem solving, which I think is another good aspect for grassroots leaders, because in this political arena, it's like the more you learn, forget sausage. It's not sausage, it's spaghetti, and it's spaghetti that's got who knows what in it. It's just such a big complex thing for the average person to wrap their head around. So I think as grassroots leaders, if you can break things down into little pieces that are manageable, that people can wrap their heads around, that are actionable, and then they can see some results, I think that is encouraging. And the last things I tell you about me is I like art and in amateur astronomy. Don't have any time for either, and they don't really matter, but I thought I'd share that. So anyway, so I've told you that, what my childhood, what kind of an adult I became. And now I'm an adult and I'm working in the chemical industry for, a major company, Dow Chemical. That's actually how I ended up in California, got a job offer, went there, spent 35 years with Dow. And during that time, I'm what I would call, for the most part, a drive-by Democrat. And I'm a Democrat because, black people were Democrats in those days. I'm also a Democrat because, I'm a feminist, right? So, but I was not really active. There were a couple of issues that motivated me to get more involved. But honestly, I couldn't tell you if the Democrat Party has a platform. I couldn't tell you then, and I can't tell you now if they have a platform. And if they do, I have no idea what's in it, But that's just I think that's kind of voters most people are, And so there was a couple of issues that motivated me. The Bush versus Gore, because, that became a nationwide event, right? You're seeing the hanging chads, remember that? So it's like, oh yeah, these guys are trying to screw us out of, Al Gore, who invented the internet. So that whole story, right? And then the Iraq War, I think, was a motivator only because I think for many of us, we understand the disproportionate toll that war takes on the sort of the working and, lower and working class people. I can remember my neighbors when I was growing up as a kid, her brother died in the Vietnam War, and I remember she came next door to tell us, and she talked about how they had to have a closed casket funeral because they couldn't see his body. And there was actually a guy who wrote a book about the Appalachian sharpshooters here in the South and said how they were disproportionately killed because they were so good at shooting that so many of them ended up getting conscripted into the military. So that was sort of a motivator for me. But then probably the big one was Hillary versus Obama. So I tell people that, and I had a special, never voted for Obama, and in fact supported Hillary because I disliked Obama so much. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but I think one of the ones I'll tell you about is I think that whole race was one of the biggest psyops, and particularly for the black community. And, there's so much around emotional manipulation with Obama because this was a person who was packaged to us in a way that was completely different from the experience of black Americans who are descendants from slaves. We had no connection with him. But that's not the way he was presented, But I was also very fortunate to have a friend who's a psychologist, and she's a black female Democrat, but she did an analysis of Obama that really helped me see things in a different way. And I won't say a lot about her analysis of him, only to say that it was not very positive. But I will tell you an interesting story about some other stereotypes that she talks about, and her stereotypes were around what the broader society, and I will say the liberal society, considers acceptable black stereotypes. And I just love these stories because she talks about, if you go back in history, so let's start with the Mammy character. So, that was the favorite character, like of movies and media. We love the Mammy. That's the big fat black woman, and, the person can come and, it's out of the movie, Gone with the Wind, and the person can come and put her head on there, and so, so you get that stereotype, but that's that's not a threatening black person. That's not someone who's educated or owns a business, so that's we like those kind of black people, right? So that's what the media, but anyway, so my friend says, okay, so that's a stereotype from the 50s, 30s, but fast forward, and what's today's version of, well, I don't think she's around, but what's today's version of the Mammy? It's Oprah. You white people bring your troubles to Oprah, and I thought her analysis was so interesting, because she talks about it's all about this psychological manipulation and perpetuating stereotypes and things that people find acceptable. The other one she talked about was Jezebel. So that's a very negative stereotype of we don't like those wild black women that are out, chasing our men, or, they're just, so this is that negative, sort of low life woman. But what's the modern day, version of that? Well, it's Beyonce. I've seen one Beyonce concert, not in person, but I said, this is like lightweight porn, So, so I just shared that story because it's kind of entertaining, but I again will credit that individual with sort of giving me a perspective, on Obama. And then also, we'll talk about from a psychological manipulation standpoint, the other thing I wanted to bring up is how that to me is such a powerful, it's not powerful, but it's an issue that we have with President Trump. And I would say it's specifically around educated women. Because I was listening to a neighbor of mine, very bright young woman, she's an attorney and an engineer. You know, she's a Republican, but she just has it against Trump. But the reason is she's been told that story over and over about grabbing the you-know-what, you know. So she's been told that story, but I think listening to her talk, the anger, I mean, there's an irrational amount of anger, but she's a divorcee. And when I listen to her, what I hear that she's transferred into some of this pain about having being a divorcee, having to raise 2 children on her own, trying to figure out how to keep them in private school, that anger gets transferred, you know. And I think the media has done a very skillful job of making older women, look at this guy, he's just like that husband of yours that left you for that young woman, you know. So anyway, so I just bring that up. It's kind of my cockamamie theory, but if you do that over and over, I think it has an impact on people. So anyway, fast forward. So I'm pretty much out of politics until Trump comes down the escalator. I did not vote for Obama either time, and I'm just nothing to be involved with, you know. But then Trump comes down the escalator, and for the first time I heard truth. So there were 3 things that resonated with me. First of all, it was China. Secondly, it was illegal immigration, and then third was Black communities then versus now. So with the China issue, my job was essentially selling to what's called, manufacturers. So we don't sell to direct consumers, but we sold products to the Sherwin-Williams of the world, or we also made, products that go in circuit boards. So it was all of those good manufacturing jobs that the U.S. used to have. And so I saw customers start plants. 3 or 4 years later, those plants are being torn down. I have talked to over and over conversations with 40, 50, 60-year-olds who are worried, am I going to get laid off? Will I find a job that's good? If I do find a job, can I afford my medical care? I mean, it was devastating, and to see that, because the most devastating part was I would get on a plane, go to China, and see an economic boom like you could not believe. And nobody knew anything about it. It's like I thought I was, you're in the twilight zone, because I was like, why are people not worried about this, So, and then you go to Hong Kong and people buy Louis Vuitton handbags like they buy chiclets. You just see money being pumped into this other country while we're being hurt. So the illegal immigration, if you want to see the effects of illegal immigration 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10, today, you go to California. I mean, it is unbelievable, and I think it is, unfortunately, what we should imagine if the entire country becomes as balkanized as that is. So you don't have a melting pot in California. You have a fruit salad, and you have all of these little individual enclaves. I mean, there are places in Garden Grove, California, where all the street signs are in Vietnamese. There are areas in Southern California where it's nothing but Hispanic. So it is just a sad situation, and I think we see the results of it, because there's a theory that at some point you really become ungovernable unless you have a military state, because there's not enough common bonds between people, and we're seeing that. I mean, when people are disagreeing about the flag, then we have a problem. So Trump was, when he started talking about these issues, I said, hallelujah, I'm not crazy after all, So I retired to South Carolina after 35 years with Dow, get involved with the Republican Party, come in at the establishment, go to the meetings at the Poinsett Club. I'm thinking, well, these people don't do much, but we're all, it's the elation of the, night of the 2016 election, and I can still feel it today, I went and my friend and I, who's also a conservative, lives in Ohio, we're talking back and forth, and I told her, I can't watch it, excuse me, because I'm just so afraid. And when I woke up the next day and he won, it was just amazing, But then, thanks, okay. So we have that elation of 2016 and then the devastation of 2020, So that's what, brings us all here today. That's why, part of the reason that we're here. So that's sort of my story. I hope it was, entertaining and that you learned something for it. And I hope you also remember the messages of the things that I had to unlearn from being a Democrat, particularly about the devastation of, what happened, when I actually was able to, as a child, walk safely in the streets of Chicago in the 60s, but you cannot do that today. So everything that Trump talked about was true. And I think he has done our nation a wonderful service. And then the other thing to remember is a piece about the manipulation. This is another one of my pet peeves, but people actually have started to ask me, why are there more gay Black people? And that is statistically not true, but if you watch the media, you watch the number of TV shows, you watch commercials for AIDS drugs, and Black men in particular are disproportionately represented in these because there's a narrative, and particularly because one of the things that the Democrats did very effectively was to conflate gay rights and civil rights for Blacks. And then the last thing I wanted to leave you with, so we've got to remember unlearning and relearning, manipulation, and then last but not least, certainly having faith in the right things. So with that, I will entertain any questions. And again, I appreciate you guys' time. So, yes, sir.
I'd like to thank you for your honest and thoughtful discourse. Could you give the third? You mentioned China. What were your three?
Yeah, so China, it was China, illegal immigration in the Black communities then versus now, which is the fact that these communities have gone, and it's not just Black communities. I lived outside San Francisco. I lived in 4 communities in California. So Walnut Creek, which is all the East Bay, but Walnut Creek, you look at the city of San Francisco, which lost 2 major hotels. The Nordstroms has moved. What's happening to these areas. I have a friend who she said they experimented with us. And, whether it's communism, whether it's Marxist, no matter what the forces are, the WEF, we don't know. But she says they experimented with the Black communities and then they just took all of this cultural devastation into the rest of the country. So now it's not just us, but that was it. And Trump talked about, asking Black people the question, what do you have to lose by looking at Republicans? Any more questions? Well, thank you guys. Oh, yes, sir.
Do you have any correlation or insight as to the elimination of the Black father in relation to the destruction of like the inner cities and that sort of thing? Basically, you would correct me if I'm wrong, but was not part of the thing to get welfare payments and you could not have the father in the home?
Yes, exactly. That is true. As I mentioned, when we grew up in a housing project, you got to realize that, Chicago, I saw one statistics, was as segregated as Johannesburg. So a lot of the Blacks lived in one area. So we did have, 2-parent families. And there were people with various, people worked at the post office, but then there were people on welfare, but we were all living together. But to your point, yes, there are today lots of statistics that, that the social, particularly with raising young boys is that, it's had a huge impact. We talk about all the time that some of this really antisocial behavior of just indiscriminately fathering, children with multiple women, is not something that was acceptable, but it has become so. When we were kids, we didn't talk about, young girls that got pregnant. It was, you took care of it, but it did not have the social acceptability, that it has, because people knew that the impact that it would have on their lives. But to your point, you go back, and so I think there's a couple called Cloward and Pliven. I think they actually came into Columbia University. I don't know if they're European, but there's more and more talk that a lot of this that's happening is really, sort of European-based socialism, Marxism, communism. So these are people that came over, and their strategy, they actually said that one of their ways to implement socialism in the country was to bankrupt the social welfare. So a lot of the problems that I said that first happened in the Black community are now become much more widespread in the U.S. Yes, ma'am.
I wonder if you have any thoughts on
Right,
It's up to that person providing the service to declare it on their income tax. I'm not the tax collector for the government.
right,
It worries me.
right,
Again, it's the disproportionate impact
right.
based on income level. And, I tell people, the IRS already had enough agents to audit the millionaires and billionaires.
Right.
This 87,000 is coming from us.
Yeah.
And it's gonna hurt a hairdresser, it's gonna hurt whoever else provides a service that I.
So I don't have any insight into that specific issue, but only insight into the mindset of a lot of the people that you're talking about. And I will tell you that there are people who are much more reliant and trusting of the government than we are. So one of the big jokes that, in Greenville is people will say, Yvonne, why do all the black people in public still wear masks, in the grocery store? Because a lot of them, even after masking was done. So my point is that whereas you see it as a problem, there are people who will say, well, if the government says do it, if they say get a, shot, I'm going to get a shot because they're looking out for me. If they say I've got to do this, because for many of those people, they're also dependent on some sort of government financial sources. So whereas you or I might push back, a lot of those people would not. Yeah. Well, thank you guys again. I hope it was helpful for you. I enjoyed it tremendously. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your questions. Welcome. Let me get my
Okay, I would like to invite the founding members again up here, if they would mind. And Mr. David Nix has a presentation.
Come here, guys.
I'd like to thank Roel for hosting us tonight. He's done a fine job. I'd also like to extend our thanks to Yvonne Julian, Jeff Davis, and the Greenville County Republican Party for coming to speak to us. It's very educational. And as a token of our appreciation, Ms. Julian, we'd like to present you with just a small plaque.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
And it says, America is too great for small dreams. Ronald Reagan, on behalf of Oconee County Conservatives.
Thank you again. Okay, we're gonna do the 50-50, find out who won it. Big money, people, big money. Oh boy, $190. Wow. Good. Oh no, I'm not sure. Why don't we have, yes, that sounds good. Why don't you guys?
I'll give them the lucky
Wonderful, okay. Don't be mad if I don't get the present.
All right. Get your tickets out. The winning number is 208-9335.
Yes.
Barry. Somebody cut off his drinks. No more drinks.
Thank you for join you.
All right. So I was hoping for some beer money.
Is that your glasses?
You live in all the
All right, this pretty much concludes our presentation. Pretty much concludes it. It's now just social time. There's still some food back there if you guys are still hungry. We want to thank Pub Blue and their crew for the amazing job they did. And again, everyone, thank you so much for coming and joining us. Hopefully, we'll do this soon again and with other speakers. But thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot, we do have a donation box for those that feel generous. It is not like someone who just won $190 somewhere.